Welcome to the Dominate the Deal podcast, where we teach you how to get more deals, get better deals, and most importantly, how to control deals with structures that allow you to exit with more profit and on your timeline. On today's episode, we're joined by Joseph Handy. Joseph is a real estate investor, educator, musician, and Army veteran. He currently serves as a staff sergeant in the 41st Army Band and is a founding member of the award-winning Southern Comfort Brass Band. He began his real estate investing journey while serving as a band director at a middle school in Jackson, Mississippi, and went from working 70 hours per week to building and managing a real estate portfolio valued at over $10 million. He's also a family man focused on creating generational wealth for his wife, Kira, and their 3 children. He is passionate about mentorship and helping others master their mind, body, and financial future. Joe, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great. Happy to have you here, man. So I'm just going to jump right in. Tell me about yourself. How long have you been in real estate? How did you get started? And where are you now? Starting with, how did you get started?
All right. So I got started. I bought my first deal back in 2017. But man, basically, I was a school teacher teaching at middle school here in Jackson, Chastain Middle School. And so long story short, I did that for at that time about 8 8 or 9 years. And man, the teaching salary just it wasn't getting it for me, man. And
I'm
so I
scared
don't
to
know if you
ask.
know this, but Mississippi, especially at that time,
Mhm.
was the lowest paying state for teachers. I think we moved up we're not 50. I think we're 48 now. So
Oh,
we're a little
wow.
bit better. But
Wow.
long story short, that that pay did not necessarily give me the warm and fuzzies, and I knew that I wanted to have a different type of lifestyle. I wanted to have some um, opportunities for my children and my family, and I wanted to be able to just get a little bit more financially stable and set. So, with that being said, man, just kind of started looking into different ways to make money, saying whether it was, just investing or, say mutual funds or in businesses or whatever the case may be. But, man, I tell you what, I had actually joined a church group at Word of Life up here in Flowood, and we were doing that Dave Ramsey program. You heard of the
Oh, yeah.
Financial Peace University?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've went through it back
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah. So we were all in there, trying to get our finances together and, trying to figure out, how to manage our money a little bit better.
uh
And after that meeting, I was talking to a guy and, we were just both kind of trying to figure out life and how we can improve our financial position. And he brought up a very compelling, you know, conversation with me. So he was like, I read something recently that said that there are 3 main ways that people acquire millions in the United States. And so he said one of them, the first one was business, which, people will start a business, selling some kind of product or service. The second one was in the stock market or investing, in stocks, bonds, and paper assets. And then he said real estate. And I wasn't at the time, I wasn't big on sales and stuff like that and trying to, be pitching people on trying to buy some product from me all the time. So I was like, nah, business right now, that's not really my thing. Um, Stocks, I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand how they worked or, saying how to even go about analyzing, what stocks to buy and so on and so forth. Excuse me. But real estate, I've always lived in some type of housing, an apartment or a house, or, people always will need somewhere to live. It's a tangible asset you can touch, you can see it, you can feel it and all of those things. I was like, man, so that really piqued my interest. And then he mentioned bigger pockets. And, then as with a lot of other investors, they just go way deep down the rabbit hole of the podcasts and saying the blogs and all of the online content, YouTube University. Bought all of the Bigger Pockets books, and man, I just kind of fully immersed myself into that particular path of learning. Because at the time, I told you I was a teacher. I was thinking
Right.
about going back and getting my doctorate, and
In
you
teaching?
know, yes, in
Wow.
teaching, in performance. So I'm a musician. I didn't say this, but I'm actually a band director. Oh, I was a band director at the time, teaching music in that particular school. Um, and that was also another thing that kind of made me want to pivot towards real estate because a lot of people don't realize it, man. But being a band director in particular is
Mhm.
very time consuming.
Oh, is it?
Man, those guys, especially if you're at the high school level, man, they might work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, between teaching all day, after school rehearsals, football games in the evenings, you got competitions on the weekend, parades, like all kind of stuff, man.
Wow.
Um, and a lot of people don't realize that, they just see, okay, the band's at the game. But all of the preparation that it takes to, get to them to that point is very, very time consuming. And I was starting to get a little burnt out. So I was like, I needed to have something that's a little more passive. Well, at the time I thought it was going to be real passive, but you know how it is with real estate. People say it's passive, but
Oh, yeah.
um, that's not necessarily
That's
the
the real
case.
dream right there.
Right, right, right. So, but anyway, but long story short, kind of, going back to my conversation with the guy, talking about, the three ways that people make millions in America. And, I settled on the real estate
Good.
and going down that, Bigger Pockets and all of the meetups. I think I joined Rig. I think that's how I actually found out about you.
Oh, okay.
um, I can't remember who it was. Somebody in Red said, "Hey man, you got this guy Jesse. He's on here with this YouTube content and talking about Section 8 housing, man. Go check him out." And then I got your contact information. I think it might have been from maybe Brian Biernet. And
Really?
then I reached out to you and we kind of connected. So
Yeah. And since
yeah.
then, you just took off. Because when was that? Like, what was that before or after you bought your first house when me and you first met?
Um I I think I had already bought a house by that point, but I only had like a few rentals, maybe like two or three, maybe at that time. I want to say.
Yeah. And and
Hmm.
since then, you built up to, you said, I think 88 houses, right?
Right, right. 88 rental units. And it's a
And
collection of a lot of different things: single family, small, duplexes.
uh,
I have an apartment complex, and I just recently purchased a commercial building.
awesome. Awesome. So with that, then do you have, because I know you do some with the Airbnbs and short-term rentals. Would you say, is that like a third of your business, half your business, all your business as far as the short-term rentals? How many of them are long-term and how many of them are short-term?
So I think it's a total of 18 short-term rentals, and the rest of them are long-term rentals.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So which
So
do you prefer?
yeah, because the long-term rentals are, they just don't require as much attention. Saying with
Mhm,
the short-term rentals, you got constant turnover,
mhm,
cleanings, and saying like if a maintenance issue happens, you got to hop on it like super fast.
mhm. Yeah,
Otherwise, you could lose, a nice booking.
right.
And plus, with the Airbnbs and these, different short-term rental platforms, you don't want to get any bad reviews. So, it's definitely uh, a side of the business that requires more attention and also just a lot more of that customer service aspect. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
mhm.
So when you first, like your first couple years, how were you purchasing? Were you going like only with partners? Were you funding it all yourself? Were you doing creative finance, subject to like what kind of stuff were you doing to get in, to break in?
To break in, so my very first property was with a partnership because I was still, I don't say I was on the fence, but I was apprehensive about jumping in because, I'd never done it before. And I
Right.
figured if I went in there and I had a couple of partners, saying that could help to shoulder the load
Right.
and, kind of help to, shorten the learning curve to a certain extent. Um, that's I felt like that was the best way to get into it. Kind of training wheels,
Yeah.
getting in there. We all put $5,000 into the deal, and so we didn't have to bring. Well, I didn't have to bring as much capital to the table. So that was the very first deal. Now after that, I used a couple of just um, commercial, not commercial, but like mortgage products, because I was house hacking. So I
Okay.
moved into a duplex. I rented one side, I lived on the other side, and we basically lived there for free because the tenant's rent covered the mortgage and also some of the utilities. Um, so I did that a couple of times, and as stated earlier, I wasn't, making a whole lot of money in my teaching job, so I had to be more creative. I had to think outside the box as far as how to put deals together and how to fund them in order to be able to, make it work and be able to acquire these properties. So I did start to do more owner
Mhm.
financing, and then also like subject to and those different strategies. And we can kind of dive into a few of those if you want to.
Yeah, which one did you do first? The creative finance where the seller was just financing everything to you, or the subject to?
I did owner financing first.
So, how
Mhm.
did that conversation go?
So basically it was a house, because I told you I was house hacking.
Mhm.
And on that street there was a duplex, both sides were vacant. The grass was high, it was windows bust out, looked like the front door was kicked in.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I went over there, man, and I, um, just took a look at the property, got the address, and then I use a skip tracing service to get the phone number for the owner. So I looked her up on the land road, got her information, contacted her, and I was like, hey, you're interested in selling this building? I see it's sitting up, and it's kind of an eyesore on the street. And she was like, okay, I want 170,000 for it. I was like, well, ma'am, that property needs a lot of work. I couldn't pay that much for it. And she was like, well, that's where I'm at on price. So I was like, okay, well, I'll follow up with you. And I did, saying maybe about 3 or 4 months later, I called her, saying she still wasn't, wanting to play ball.
Mhm.
And then maybe about a few months later after that, I hit her back up and I was like, hey, like, are you ready to sell now? She was like, yeah. What about 100,000? I was like, "Okay, that's closer." And then so I went to her house, we met up, and I had actually sat down. I had, came up with, some terms for owner financing because I knew she was older, she was retired, she was wanting some more passive, income means. And,
Mhm.
so long story short, we agreed to, uh, uh, I think it was 103,000. I
Mm.
paid 2,500 down and the payments were, I think, 750 at 0% interest.
There you go.
So long story short, I used some other creative means to get that property rehab. I actually used some 0% credit cards.
Nice.
So I think it was 0% balance transfers for like 18 months. And that's what I used to renovate the property. So I think I put about 12,000 into each unit, so 24,000 total. Got them rented. So, um, both sides, or one was rented for 1,100 and then the other one was rented for 1,000. So made some good cash flow. Now those same units are rented for 1,200 and the other side is rented for 1,350.
Nice.
So
Nice.
rents have grown. I'm still paying that same 750 a month at 0%, and
There you
that shit
go,
is doing
man.
very well.
That's what I'm talking about. And you know what? That's something that people don't talk about on the buy and hold side because buy and hold it just doesn't sound very sexy, man. It's like, all right, so I'm going to make, $400 cash flow a month or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And they don't factor in that every single year that number goes up, but
Yeah,
your
exactly.
expenses are going to stay relatively low, at least the mortgage portion of,
Mhm.
the property, it's not going to change.
Right.
So So, if you start out at a 10% or 12%, rate of return, that's going to go up eventually to a lot more than that. It's
Right,
going
exactly.
to hit up that
So,
30, 40%. Yeah. That's
yeah, I agree, and then you get all of the other different benefits of, holding on to a property. So you get the tax benefits,
awesome.
depreciation, the business write-offs, you get the, appreciation,
Yep.
properties going up over time, the loan is being paid down by the tenant, and then also the cash flow that you get each month. So, I mean, it's a lot of different that's the reason why I don't really flip and sell my properties, man, like every now and then I'll sell one if I just kinda, need some cash or if I just, it's an asset that I'm just not interested in holding on to anymore, but for the most part, I really like to like Warren Buffett says, "Buy and hold forever."
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. What about the very first one that you bought? You said, did we talk about that? Yeah, the one that you got with the partners.
Right,
That one you
mhm.
sold, right? Tell us about that one a
Yes.
little bit.
So yeah, so, long story short, we bought that property on the MLS. It was, occupied, a duplex, and, one side was occupied and the other one, they had just did a rehab on it, so, like, right after, we bought it, we got it filled, and so both sides were rented, and, it did well. And then we just sold that property last year, and it had more than doubled in price. So, that one
Nice.
turned out very well.
Awesome. Good deal, man.
Mhm,
So let's go back real quick. We talked about the creative financing where you just worked on this seller finance deal with the lady, the duplex. But we also kind of touched on subject two, and I know a lot of
mhm.
people that are listening or watching won't even know what that is. So could you just real quick give us a brief overview of what sub two is, and then tell us
Mhm.
about one of your deals and how you pitch it?
All right. So sub two is basically the strategy where you have a seller that is in some level of distress. They may be in pre foreclosure or they need to move and get out of a situation or whatever the case may be. And so, long story short, you don't assume the payments, meaning that you take over the payments and they're in your name. Actually, you just start making payments basically on the behalf of the seller and they deed the property over to you. So you actually do take title, but the mortgage stays in place. So, you acquire the property subject to the existing mortgage. So that's pretty much the strategy. Did I explain that well
Yeah.
enough?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So basically the mortgage stays in their name. They're still kind of on the hook for the mortgage. You get the property. So you're in a kind of a powerful situation, but there's still some protections in place for the person selling you the property. Obviously, if
Right.
you stop paying, well, then worst case scenario to get foreclosed on and the bank will
Mhm.
get it back. Do you set up anything like for instance when I do sub twos, I put it in a trust and then I tell the owners, I write into the trust that if I miss 3 consecutive payments, then they become the beneficiary of that trust again. So they basically get ownership before it gets to that point where the bank forecloses. Have you
Yeah, I
done
have some
anything like that?
similar verbiage in there, like that. Yes, correct. I can't remember exactly, but it's something very similar to what you just said. If I make, so many payments or miss so many payments, then the property gets, deeded back to that person. But, just generally speaking, um, if I ever got to the point where I couldn't pay, I would
Yeah,
just go ahead and, send the deed back to it. Cause I'm a man of integrity. I'm a man of my word. If I tell you I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. I've
right.
never defaulted on any type of loan, some missing loan payments and stuff like that. I believe in, taking care of my obligations and doing what I say that I'm gonna do. And just generally speaking in life and also in business, that has, those particular principles have worked out very well for me and it's credibility, what I'm saying, it's all of those things that help for people to trust you and to want to do business with you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
you know the number one rule in business, which is a good name is worth more than gold or silver. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I've operate the same way, and I think that, just creating those little extra safety nets for the people selling you, they just need to see I feel like they just need to see something in place so that they can justify in their mind handing this property over to you while they keep that mortgage in their name. Because then they a lot of times they gotta go tell their wife or their mom or somebody, and they don't want
Yeah.
that person to be like, "You're crazy. How come you're gonna let them do that?" You know? And so I
Yeah.
feel like just by putting that in there, it makes it where, you know, you're gonna be able to close, like, almost every time as opposed to hardly ever.
Yeah,
So,
because it
but
gives them a certain level of comfort, some assurances, because it is, as with anything, there's a level of risk, right? And
yeah.
if you can frame it in a way to where it reduces their level of risk and also gives them some incentives to, move forward with the deal,
Mhm.
that sounds like a win-win for everybody. You know,
Yeah.
and this house that I'm in right now is a subject to deal.
I love it. I love it, man. That's awesome. So tell me about your favorite sub 2, like, how you found it.
Well,
Is is it this one?
actually, this one, yeah,
Yeah.
so long story short, there was a guy who, kind of had an interesting story. So he was in the military, he got out, and he was retired, what I'm saying, with full, disability benefits. And so he was like, you know what? I don't like living in the United States anymore. I'm gonna move over to the Philippines. And he did that. He went over there, got him a wife, and they got kids now. And but long story short, he left the house here and didn't make another payment. He just up and left one day and said, "All right,
Oh, wow.
forget that house. I'm gonna just let it go into foreclosure." So I was just doing some driving for dollars, which is another, great strategy for investors to use, driving through neighborhoods. I saw the house. Man, I tried to get him on the phone like multiple times, and I couldn't get him through the skip tracing process. So I was like, man, let me see if I can find him on Facebook. And
Yo,
I did.
I
And I
like it.
sent him a message on Facebook. Um, and we worked it out. I told him who I was, and for people who don't know, I'm also in the military, so that was another way that we kind of connected. That's a way that I built rapport with him. Kind of told him about my situation, what I was trying to do, and long story short, we got it done. It was a little more complex, because he had to like go to like an embassy to like get
Oh,
the
notarized and everything.
yeah, the documents signed and notarized and all of that. But we made it happen. And what I'm saying? So it
So,
it worked out very well.
since he was just ready to walk away from it all,
Mhm.
do you think it was harder for you to get him to sign everything over to you, or was it because he just didn't wanna fool with anything, or was it easier?
It was easier because um he didn't really care about the house. Like, what I'm saying, he had no kind of emotional attachment to it. He was like, okay, well, and long story short, um I think I paid him like $500 to deed the property over to me.
So $500 and you're in that. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a pretty sweet house. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's awesome.
And, so, then that's pretty much what happened. So,
Did he have a good interest rate?
yeah, it was like 3%.
That's what I'm talking about. So, anyway,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, and if you kinda sorta knew the potential when you first got started, but most people, they've got this idea in their head when they're thinking about real estate and they've never done it. They think, I need money. And I'll never get to be there. I'll never get to be where that guy's at because,
Mhm.
maybe he had a trust fund or maybe he had parents that left him 300 grand or something like that, or just whatever amount is
Right.
set in their head. And they don't realize that what you really need is the info. You need the
Right.
information. You need to know, the right strategies, and then you need to be in the right room. And all of that
Mhm.
is very attainable. Um,
Right.
but if they
Yeah.
never get that one piece of information, then, they stay stuck.
Right.
So,
And it's funny you say that because I just recently had that conversation with somebody. Actually, I had that conversation frequently.
yeah.
Because every time I tell people, I do real estate investing, they're like, "Well, man, how much money do you have to have to do it. And so, did you have a lot of money when you got started? And, so they'll be like, well, I can't invest now because, you know, I just don't have enough money. And what I will tell people is that you don't really necessarily have to have money to do it. It's more so like what you said, you having the knowledge to be
Mm,
able to structure things to where you can acquire the properties. And there's a quote I heard Tony Robbins say it, but basically he was like, "No, uh, let me see, I'm gonna try not to butcher it here, but is that most people's problem is not a lack of resources; it's a lack of resourcefulness."
no doubt.
And that's, being able to get the resources needed to do what you need to do. And, and we can kind of, get into some other things, but like right now, like my main strategy is the BRRRR strategy. And so, basically I can acquire these properties with no money out of pocket using, saying either hard money or private money. They'll fund the deal, the purchase and the rehab, and then I just refinance and I have no money in the project.
Yeah. Do you normally are you able to pull any extra out when you do that, or do you normally just pull out whatever you need in order to pay off your lender and cover your rehab?
Uh, Both. I mean, sometimes, generally speaking, I try not to be over leveraged and try not to have, you know, too large of a loan to where it affects my cash flow. Because, like
Yeah,
I said, I'm mainly a buy and hold cash flow guy. I want, cash flow for the long term. And if you're over leveraged, that will decrease the amount of cash flow that you have coming in. But
yeah,
sometimes if it's a great deal, if I get, if I'm able to negotiate a purchase price that is great,
yeah.
then I'll have a lot more equity there and I can pull some out. So
Nice,
yeah, so I want to say maybe I did a refinance on the project last month, and I walked away from that refinance with $6,000 in my pocket,
nice. That's
and
awesome, man.
none of my own cash was invested in it. So I'll say that was a home run.
Yeah, no, that is a home run, man. That's awesome. You've been hitting home run after home run right now, so,
Trying to.
you know,
Hmm.
and you're still in the 2nd inning if you wanna be, but you don't have to be 'cause, yeah, just, one thought that I had about what you said earlier about it's not so much a lack of, resources as it is a lack of resourcefulness, and, for you, like, that one story about the subject too, like, a perfect example of that not necessarily in the context of what we were talking about, but a perfect example of that is, you looked the guy up online, you couldn't find a good mailing address, you couldn't find a good phone number, you couldn't get in touch with him. And a lot of people would have just stopped right there. But you
Hmm.
decided you were going to just take it one step further. You were going to put just one little bit more effort or piece of effort into it. And then
Hmm.
because of that, you got a beautiful house that you only paid $500 down to get into
Right.
and you got a 3% interest rate, which, nobody can touch right now. So that's,
Exactly. Yeah.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so
Well,
like you said, it was just going back to, man, I put a post up on Facebook a little while ago, and some people got it, some people didn't, but I said the most important asset that you have is
mhm,
between your ears, right?
that's right. No doubt.
And if you can cultivate your mind to be able to grasp these concepts and be able to execute, saying these different strategies, man, sky's the limit.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, Joe, I really appreciate you coming on to the show. Tell for everybody that's listening, I know that you offer a little bit of coaching and how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah,
How can they
so
find
on Facebook, I'm on there pretty regularly, and also I have an Instagram, Handy Buys Houses
you?
on
Okay.
Instagram, and so you can see a lot of pictures and videos of my content and the different projects that we're working on. And matter of fact, that's where I'm about to head right after we get done with this. I got a one of my hoarder houses.
Oh boy.
Man, people love seeing those hoarder houses, man.
Yeah,
The
I
before
know.
and afters. So anyway, we're at the final phases of finishing that up. So I'm excited about that one, and I'll be sharing that project. So if y'all want to see an ugly, nasty house get cleaned up, stay tuned.
Nice. I love it. All right, man. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. And I guess we'll wrap this one up. So,
All right, sounds good, man. Thanks for having me.